First sociopath.
I like Dutch, but he didn't save my life. I saved his.
First sociopath on the list? Yes, it had to be Micah Bell. Of course it did. Micah Bell walks into the camp like that dude your mom warned you about. Loud, grinning, already asking who he can shoot. And at first, yeah, he's fun. He cracks jokes, stirs things up, acts like he's the only one brave enough to get stuff done. That's the bait. Micah has that fake charm, too good to be true, first impression energy. He sticks to Dutch, mirrors him, tells him exactly what he wants to hear. Then slowly he starts nudging the gang off a cliff. Saint Denis goes to hell, you wash up on Guarma, and somehow Micah keeps climbing the social ladder while everyone else is bleeding out in the mud. That's where the sociopath traits really start glowing. He doesn't care. People die, the gang fractures, families get ruined. Micah just shrugs and reaches for another cigarette. That total lack of empathy, that's one of the big glaring traits of a sociopath. Then there's the manipulation instinct. That's his favorite weapon. He whispers in Dutch's ear, plays victim when it suits him, plays hero when it makes him look good, all while secretly cozying up to the Pinkertons and selling everyone out. Using people like tools, zero guilt afterwards. That's pure sociopath wiring. Micah isn't just the snake in the grass. He's the one who convinced you to lie down there in the first place. Second sociopath.
For me, in that case, it'd be my honor.
Second sociopath is the man with the fancy speeches and the rotten center, Dutch van der Linde, the man who sells dreams like snake oil and smiles while everything burns. Dutch talks like freedom itself hired a hype man. Around the campfire, he makes robbery sound noble, murder sound philosophical, and disaster sound like part of the plan. And early on, you almost believe him. That charm is his camouflage. Then the mask starts slipping. Saint Denis collapses. The bank job turns into a graveyard. Hosea dies. Lenny dies. And Dutch just keeps talking. No pause, no grief, no guilt. That cold, distant reaction, that's the absence of empathy in full view, like the world is a story and everyone else is disposable side characters. And when people question him, he gets meaner and rewrites reality, like, John was never loyal. Arthur doesn't understand. Anyone who doubts him magically becomes the villain. That's the manipulation instinct of a sociopath kicking in, bending people, twisting emotions, tightening control. By the later chapters, it's paranoia, betrayal, and trust me on loop. And somehow you realize he isn't confused. He's just comfortable. VO line. Dutch didn't lose his mind. He just stopped pretending the monster wasn't him. Third sociopath.
Your property, like that little farm of yours, or having you put in an electric chair. Those are the
Third sociopath on deck is, of course, it's Edgar Ross, the man who makes government corruption look like a holiday scam. Edgar Ross doesn't swagger into the world of Red Dead Redemption with a pistol out. He slides in with a clipboard and a grin, like the bureaucratic version of a snake oil salesman, but with badges and moral amnesia. You meet him early in Blackwater, and at first it's like, hey partner, help us bring in some outlaws. Then he kidnaps John's wife and kid, drops that emotional bomb, and hands John a gun with a bureaucrat's handshake. That's mental hostage chess. What makes Ross feel sociopathic isn't just the betrayal, it's how casually he does it. John does every mission the Bureau orders, like tracking down Bill Williamson, Javier Escuella, even Dutch, thinking that once the job's done, he'll finally go home. Ross lets him have that moment, then turns the cavalry loose on Beecher's hope. John gets riddled with bullets in front of Abigail and Jack, and Ross just stands there like a supervisor watching performance metrics. That chilling lack of remorse, letting John die after promising safety, feels less like flawed strategy and more like someone who sees people as check marks on a ledger. And when Jack tracks him down years later and finally puts a bullet in him, Ross doesn't squirm. He barely flinches. It's like he expected it. Ross doesn't kill with passion, he kills with protocol, and that makes it sting a whole lot worse. Fourth sociopath, Colonel Agustín Allende.
¿Qué eres, un muchacho? Jovencito sin vergüenza.
The kind of man who runs a country like it's his personal torture museum. Allende isn't subtle. He doesn't pretend to care. He doesn't dress it up in speeches the way Dutch does. He rules Nuevo Paraíso with that smile while people scream energy. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of thing a hardcore sociopath does. When John meets him, Allende plays polite host for about 5 minutes. Then it turns into firing squads, prisoners begging, towns burned, rebels hung from trees like decorations. And he doesn't just allow it, he enjoys it. That total emotional disconnect, laughing at pain, shrugging at death, that's the classic sociopath lack of empathy showing up loud and clear. And watch how he treats people he needs. He promises safety, protection, favors, then sells them out the moment they're inconvenient. He pits rebels against rebels, backstabs his own officers, and acts like loyalty is something you rent by the hour. That cold chessboard manipulation, which is exactly what sociopaths do. By the time John teams up with the rebels and Allende finally gets dragged out, it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like the world finally stopped letting him play God. Allende doesn't break hearts, he breaks people and calls it leadership. Fifth sociopath.
It's like I said, this is a charismatic leader.
Fifth sociopath in our list is Colm O'Driscoll. He is literally the human equivalent of a rabid buzzard in a fancy coat. Colm isn't complicated. He doesn't hide behind philosophy or pretend he cares. From the first time the Van der Linde gang bumps into his boys, you feel it. This dude lives for cruelty. Ambushes, hangings, kidnappings, random executions. If it bleeds, Colm is probably nearby, smiling like he just won something. And that right there is what sociopaths do. Hurt people, then treat it like sport. Remember when they grab Arthur? The torture, the knife, the slow humiliation. Colm doesn't just order it, he savors it. He stands there talking like it's a friendly conversation while Arthur's tied to a chair bleeding out. That cold, casual vibe? That's that lack of empathy turned all the way up. He lies the same way he kills, without emotion, promises truces, breaks them immediately, sends men to die just to prove a point, uses civilians as bait. That constant manipulation, that everyone is disposable except me attitude, that's pure sociopath territory. And in the end, when Colm is captured and marched up to that gallows, he doesn't apologize, he doesn't reflect, he just sneers. Because even losing feels like another game to him. Colm didn't want power, he wanted pain, and the world finally told him no. Sixth sociopath, Leviticus Cornwall.
Of the law.
The law? I think we both know what you can do with your law.
Capitalism with a cigar and zero conscience. Cornwall doesn't swing guns like the gangs do. He hires people who swing guns, and then complains if they use too many bullets because it cuts into margins. From the minute he shows up barking orders at Pinkertons, he feels less like a businessman and more like a storm in a suit. Loud, controlling, furious that the world won't bend fast enough. And yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing sociopaths do. They don't just want success, they want domination. Cornwall treats entire towns like chessboards. Railroads, oil fields, factories. If people get crushed in the process, they're just expenses. Miners die, workers starve. He doesn't flinch. That cold, detached attitude towards suffering, that's that no empathy switch flipped off and locked. And when Dutch keeps robbing him, Cornwall doesn't look for peace or reason. He escalates. He drags the Pinkertons across states, hunts entire communities, and turns the Van der Linde mess into open warfare. Not out of justice, but ego. Because being disrespected feels worse to him than people dying. That's another sociopath pattern right there. Control first, humanity nowhere on the list. Cornwall didn't care about money. Money was just the tool he used to remind everyone he owned the room. Seventh sociopath.
Compassion already by simply allowing you to breathe in my presence.
Angelo Bronte, the velvet-gloved handshake that somehow leaves fingerprints on your soul. Bronte isn't like Colm or Micah. He doesn't shout, doesn't posture, doesn't spray bullets everywhere. He invites you into that polished Saint Denis mansion, feeds you, smiles, pats Jack on the head, and somehow you walk out owing him your spine. That too charming to be real vibe? Yeah, that's exactly what sociopaths do. He plays Dutch like a piano, favors, promises, polite little agreements. Then he sends the gang on errands that get nastier and nastier, grave robbing, intimidation, working with crooked cops, while he sits safely behind his dinner table like a king. That's the manipulation in an instinct right there. Move people around, never get dirty, pretend it's all business. And when he finally betrays Dutch, he doesn't rage, he doesn't explain. He simply hands the gang to the law like he's swapping cigars. That cold, casual willingness to ruin people, that's the lack of empathy side kicking in hard. People die, trust evaporates, chaos erupts, and Bronte just adjusts his cufflinks until Dutch drags him to the swamps, and suddenly the man who owned Saint Denis is begging like anyone else. Bronte's real weapon wasn't money or the law. It was convincing everyone he was too respectable to be dangerous. Eighth sociopath.
No, la próxima vez será aún más duro.
Alberto Fussar, the guy who turned an island paradise into a prison camp with palm trees. Fussar doesn't just rule Guarma, he squeezes it. Sugar fields, armed patrols, firing squads at sunrise. He struts around the fort like the world is his property and the people are just broken tools. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of thing sociopaths do. Absolute control, zero conscience. When Arthur and the gang wash up on Guarma, you see it fast. Civilians whipped, rebels hunted, workers treated like livestock. Fussar signs death orders like paperwork, then walks off without looking back. That cold, empty reaction to suffering, that's the no empathy gear locked in. And then comes the manipulation. He feeds the plantation owners what they want to hear, pits locals against each other, and blames rebels for the misery he created. He doesn't need charm, he uses fear. Because for him, power isn't responsibility. Power is entertainment. By the time Hercule and the rebels push back and the fort is on fire, Fussar still thinks he's untouchable, like the bullets are an inconvenience, not consequences. That arrogance, which is also pure sociopath territory. story. Fussar didn't just rule Guarma, he stripped the soul out of it and forgot souls belong to people. Ninth sociopath.
Told you I heard something. Well, ain't this a rare treat?
The Aberdeens, Bray and Tammy, the world's most uncomfortable dinner invitation. You roll up to their little farmhouse out in Scarlet Meadows, and at first it feels harmless. Awkward, yeah, but harmless. They feed you, laugh too hard, talk way too sweet. And that right there is the trap that too friendly, too fast charm sociopaths love to use. Then the room starts to feel wrong. The photos, the smell, the basement nobody mentions, and suddenly you realize they're not being nice. They're sizing you up like groceries. These two don't just rob travelers. They lure you in, get you drunk, knock you out, strip you, dump you in a pit, and pick your pockets clean. And if you piece the place apart afterward, it gets darker. Bones, graves, personal belongings. They treat human life the same way they treat leftovers. That's the no empathy gear right there. Exactly what sociopaths do when they stop seeing people as people. And the manipulation is almost playful. Fake hospitality, fake innocence, that creepy sibling banter while you slowly realize you're the entree. It's not rage, it's enjoyment, which is what makes them feel like full-blown sociopaths, not just criminals. The Aberdeens don't welcome guests, they season them. 10th sociopath.
Whoa. Relax, I ain't here to rob you.
Catherine Braithwaite, sweet tea, old money, and a heart colder than the Lemoyne fog. When you first meet her at Braithwaite Manor, she moves slow, smiles thin, speaks like every word is dipped in honey, and somehow still manages to make you feel like you tracked mud onto her soul. That polished southern charm? That's the pretend warmth while pulling strings tricks sociopaths love to run. Underneath the velvet, it's knives. She treats her family like property, workers like ghosts, enemies like insects. There's no guilt, no pause, just this chilling certainty that her status makes everything okay. People get hurt, lives get ruined, wars spark off between families, and Catherine barely blinks. That's that no empathy switch again. The one sociopaths flip and never flip back. And the manipulation? She could teach classes. Lies layered on lies, using Jack as leverage, whispering poison into every conversation, pushing the Braithwaites deeper into madness just to hold on to power. She doesn't rage, she plots. That's the kind of control-obsessed thinking that makes her feel like a die-hard sociopath, not just a mean rich lady. When it all collapses, the fire, the screaming, the legacy burning down, she still clings to pride like it's oxygen. Catherine sacrificed everything just to stay queen one more day. 11th sociopath, Jeremiah Compson.
Look at me. Useless. I wasn't born.
We meet him sitting outside a burned-out house in Scarlet Meadows, whining about how they ruined his life. Old, bitter, pathetic, and at first you almost feel bad for him. Then you start digging through what's left of his home, and the truth crawls out like rot from the floorboards. Ledger books, shackles, auction records, notes about runaways recovered. Compson wasn't just wealthy, he built that wealth on hunting people like animals. And when you confront him, he still doesn't care. No guilt, no reflection, not even a flicker of shame. He talks about enslaved families like broken furniture. He laughs at the idea of consequences. T had total emotional deadness. That's exactly what sociopaths do when they erase humanity from the equation. And the manipulation is there too. The whole poor old me, help me get my keepsakes back routine, that's bait. He plays the victim while conveniently skipping the part where he was the monster. That ability to rewrite the story, to make himself the wronged one, is pure sociopath survival behavior. By the end, you don't feel pity anymore. You feel like the world finally remembered who Jeremiah Compson really was. Compson didn't lose his house. He lost the lie that made him feel righteous. 12th sociopath, Andrew Milton.
Man! And in such complex circumstances.
The lawman who thinks justice is whatever hurts the most. Milton isn't wild like Micah, and he's not glamorous like Bronte. He's cold, procedural. He walks into every scene like the consequences were already decided, and everybody else is just there to sign paperwork. And that's the part that feels dangerous. This is exactly what sociopaths do when they put morality on autopilot. From the moment he corners Arthur and Dutch at Horseshoe Overlook, you feel it. He talks calm, polite even, while threatening to wipe out the entire camp. Later, he tracks them through Valentine, Strawberry, St. Denis, Guarma Fallout, all the way back again, and every step, more people die. Civilians, outlaws, bystanders, doesn't matter. He calls it order. We call it bodies. And there's no pause, no doubt. Arthur is sick. Families are scared. Kids are involved. Milton doesn't blink. That lack of empathy, that cold, blank certainty, is the sociopath gear turning quietly in the background. He manipulates too. Deals that aren't deals. Words wrapped in false promises. He dangles freedom, then tightens the noose. That's another sociopath move. Control first, humanity last. In the end, Milton still thinks he's the hero. And that might be the scariest part. Milton didn't chase criminals. He chased control and called the wreckage justice. 13th sociopath.
Nation. Disobeying an order. Treason.
Are you mad? You had those vaccines.
Colonel Henry Favours, the man who wears a uniform, talks about duty and somehow manages to make cruelty sound like logistics. Favours doesn't rant or foam at the mouth. He sits behind a desk at Fort Wallace and signs misery like it's paperwork. Oil pipelines through sacred land, forced relocations, starvation as strategy. And yeah, that's exactly what sociopaths do when they mistake power for permission. When Arthur and the gang cross paths with the Wapiti, you see it play out. Favours toys with treaties, breaks promises, arrests leaders, and pushes until violence becomes inevitable. People beg, chiefs plead, families suffer, and he barely reacts. That blank, detached lack of empathy, that's the sociopath switch, flipped off, locked, and welded. And watch the manipulation. He hides behind orders, blames Washington, blames the tribe, blames literally anyone but himself, while purposely escalating tension so he can justify more soldiers, more guns, more control. That's another sociopath move. Rewrite the story so you're never the villain. By the time Eagle Flies lies dying and Rain's Fall stands broken, Favours still thinks he's the reasonable one. Favours didn't fight a war, he managed cruelty like a spreadsheet and called it policy. 14th sociopath, Vincente de Santa.
On here. Have you heard? There's a war going on.
The guy who smiles, salutes, and sells you out before the dust settles. De Santa is the kind of officer who loves uniforms more than people. We meet him in Nuevo Paraíso looking like an ally, friend of the government, helping John navigate Allende's mess. He jokes, flatters, and even plays helpful tour guide to tyranny. But yeah, that fake charm at the start, that's exactly what sociopaths do when they're setting the hook. Then the mask comes off. De Santa drags prisoners to firing squads like it's morning chores. He taunts rebels. He laughs at fear. There's no hesitation, just casual cruelty, like the world exists to entertain him. That total lack of empathy is the engine here. People die, families disappear, and he treats it like gossip. And the manipulation? He's fluent. He promises John help. He swears loyalty. Then, the second it benefits him, he turns, betrays, and throws John right under the wagon. That's the sociopath move in full. Use you, then erase you. By the time the rebels finally catch him, the bravado melts, and you realize, without power, he's nothing. De Santa didn't fight for Mexico. He fought for whoever fed his ego the fastest. 15th sociopath.
Only he takes things a tiny little step too far.
Archer Fordham, the quiet shadow walking 2 steps behind Edgar Ross, and somehow just as cold. Fordham doesn't brag or threaten much. He just stands there, hat low, voice steady, eyes empty, while Ross does the talking. And honestly, that's almost worse. Because this is exactly what sociopaths do when they decide feelings are inefficient. They turn themselves into machines. From the first time you deal with the Bureau in Red Dead Redemption, Fordham treats John like inventory. Not a man or a father, but a tool. Another name on a form. He escorts, supervises, nods at orders, and every time Ross pushes something cruel, Fordham backs it like it's just policy. People get dragged away, families get leveraged, promises get broken, and Fordham barely reacts. That blank, unreadable lack of empathy, yeah, that's the sociopath gear slipping quietly into place. No outrage, no regret, just procedure. He manipulates too, but he does it differently than Ross. Less lies, more pressure. Do the job. Cooperate. Don't make this harder. It's the kind of slow, suffocating control that doesn't need yelling. And that's exactly how a die-hard sociopath keeps their conscience clean and pretend it isn't personal. And when John dies at Beecher's Hope, Fordham treats it like paperwork closing. Fordham didn't need to pull the trigger. His job was making sure nobody ever escaped the system. 16th sociopath.
Thank you for agreeing to meet with me.
Guido Martelli, the guy who runs crime like it's an accounting department. Guido doesn't yell or throw tantrums like mostly sociopaths. He doesn't even look sweaty. He steps into St. Denis after Bronte and says, basically, all right, let's make evil efficient. Extortion, protection rackets, quiet threats whispered over expensive dinners, and if someone refuses, they disappear. No drama, no rage, just gone. And that calm, that's what sociopaths do. No empathy, no guilt, just numbers on a ledger. He treats people like assets, moves gangs like chess pieces, and smiles while everyone else bleeds. He isn't chasing chaos like Micah. He isn't begging like Cleet. He's the guy who stands behind the table, deciding who gets crushed next. Cold. Organized. Zero conscience. That's the real nightmare. Guido doesn't need to pull the trigger. He just signs the paperwork that makes it happen. 17th sociopath.
Oh, I know you two.
Hey, look who it is.
Mr. Black, the walking question mark with a mean streak. Mr. Black shows up like a rumor that learned how to talk. You hear about him before you really know him, an outlaw drifting around Lemoyne, always in trouble, always one bad decision ahead of the posse, and when you finally deal with him, it hits you fast. This guy isn't misunderstood. He just doesn't care. He laughs through danger. He shrugs at suffering. Anyone in his way becomes collateral, and he says it like it's weather. That total emotional flatline when people get hurt? Yeah, that's exactly what sociopaths do. There's no pause. No, maybe I went too far. Just, welp, they shouldn't have been standing there. He's manipulative too, in that outlaw grifter way. Plays tough, plays victim, plays whatever role keeps him out of chains for one more day. He'll swear loyalty, then vanish the second the odds flip. That chameleon survival instinct, that's sociopath territory all the way down. And the mystery around him doesn't soften it. If anything, it makes it worse. You're left piecing together chaos, realizing the common ingredient is always him, smiling like the world is just something to lean on until it breaks. Mr. Black isn't a legend. He's just proof that some people sleep fine after the worst things they do. 18th sociopath. And
there ain't no shame in looking for a better world.
You know, nothing.
Before I mention his name, most of you would be surprised, but yeah, let's say it. Arthur Morgan. Why? Because he also treats killing like taking out the trash. Somebody looks at him wrong? Bang. Stagecoach won't stop? Bang, bang. Whole town decides to pick a fight? Arthur. Sigh. All right then. And afterward he's like, anyway, let's get a drink. Look at the missions. In a short walk in a pretty town, bodies hit the dirt, Arthur barely flinches. Blood feuds. Ancient and modern. Houses burning. People screaming. He just keeps moving. Half the robberies? He could have walked away. Instead, yep, bang. That cold do it, move on, don't think about it, reaction. That's exactly what sociopaths do. No empathy, no mourning, just cleanup. Then tuberculosis shows up like, hey buddy, ever heard of consequences? And suddenly Arthur discovers feelings. Now in Help a Brother Out, he's helping monks. In Do Not Seek Absolution, he tries making amends. In A Fork in the Road, he starts talking like a philosopher. Not because he's secretly pure. Because the Grim Reaper is basically waiting outside camp. That's another sociopath pattern. Regret only when the bill shows up. He joined the gang at 14, basically raised on gunsmoke and bad decisions. Grew up robbing, killing, explaining it all away like it was just the life. And when anyone calls him out, he drops that man. Unleashed nonsense, emotional duct tape so he doesn't have to feel guilty. Now I know most of you guys would confuse it with a psychopath, but there are clear differences between a psychopath and a sociopath. A psychopath, they're born ice cold. No guilt, no fear, no real conscience. Think about Micah who lies for fun, hints at very bad things, kills because it amuses him, doesn't even understand why people are upset. A sociopath? They're built by environment. Violence, trauma, bad role models, the brain learns to shut feelings down just to survive. They can still feel empathy. It's just weak, buried, inconvenient. Arthur? He lives right there. He doesn't mourn the people he kills. He shuts off emotion. He defends the violence so long that eventually he can't even hear his own conscience. Not heartless, just trained to mute his heart until it stops talking. Cold, detached. Shoots when walking away was an option. Only feels bad when time is almost gone. Arthur didn't discover morality. He realized the checkpoint was gone and suddenly stopped speed-running murder.